Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us for tonight's episode of The Hush. I have tonight's guest with me, Tayomi Morgan, aka Glamazon Tayomi. She is a sexpert, sex educator, writer, and radio host. Tayomi is the founder of GlamErotica101.com, the resident sexpert at Ebony.com, and a radio host at Playboy Radio. You can find her at sexperttayomi.com and on Twitter at Glamazon Tayomi. Tayomi, welcome so much for joining us tonight.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I'm excited. Welcome to the show. You happen to be tweeting about a couple issues, and that's how I kind of got familiar with your work. I want to know, and I'm sure a lot of people out there want to know, have you always been body positive and sex positive? Or if not, where did this journey begin for you?
I've definitely always been body positive. You know, I grew up with a grown woman's body at a very early age. I started growing boobs in the third grade at 8 years old. And so I've just always been very conscious about my body, considering I had to conceal it so that way, you know, older men wouldn't think that I was older than what I was. And I was tall. So in the fourth grade, I was my mom's height. My mom is about 5'7", and I was wearing like a size 9 shoe and I think like an A-cup bra. So men would think that at 10, I was like 16 or something, or sometimes college age. And so my mom would just always be like, you know, we got to dress you conservative. So I've just always been very conscious about my body because I was forced to be. And just growing up in dance and just other really positive activities that caused me to be focused on my body, it was just like, okay, embrace it. Even though there were certain things I didn't like about myself, I just always had this awareness like, okay, if you eat right, if you work out, you exercise, you know, take care of your body, it'll take care of you. And so I just always try to encourage people to do the same.
Now you mentioned, and since you mentioned your mom already, you have talked about, you know, your close relationship with your dad on some of the videos that are out there. I caught one of your YouTube interviews. Have your parents, do they play a big role in you embracing your body and being body positive?
Yeah, especially my dad. He's always, you know, taught us, my sister and myself, because I have a twin sister, you know, not to be ashamed of our height, not to be ashamed of our grandness, and to love the skin that we're in. And the same with my mom. You know, she's always just encouraged us to embrace who we are and to be authentic to self. So.
Now, how did you make that transition from, I know you went from modeling into deciding that you kind of wanted to write in this space, be a sexpert, be a sex educator. And so how did you kind of make that transition to decide that you really wanted to kind of put yourself out there that way?
So things were going well with my modeling and I was happy with how things were going. And my dad kind of just set me down one day and was like, you know, this is all great. I'm happy for you. I'm proud of you. But you're a very talented writer and you should do something with that. I don't care what you write about, just write something, because I guarantee you it'll give you everything that you want and more, including, you know, modeling or whatever. And at the time I was like, oh, whatever. But when I did America's Next Top Model and I didn't get chosen for like the finals, it kind of like my career took a turn. So I was like, that was the kind of like the creme de la creme of my goals for my career. So I was like, you know what? I want to go ahead and explore this. And my late aunt, God rest her soul, she was encouraging me to do a blog. And this was when blogging really started to become popular. She's like, oh, there's this new thing called a blog. You should try it out. I think it'll be great for you, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, fine. So number one rule in blogging is, you know, what can you write about that you will never get tired of? Because you have to wake up every day and want to do it. So I wanted to go into fashion at first, and I started it, and I had really good support with it. But then I thought, this is not changing the world. This is not like bringing any substance to the world. No shade to anybody that's like a fashion blogger or whatever. But for me personally, I just felt like I could be using my knowledge to do something more productive and something that's a little more influential for people. And so I thought, okay, what subject could I write about that would do that and I would never get tired of? And I was like, oh, sex. And plus, I saw that it was a very unsaturated lane, especially for Black women and people of color.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw that there was a void that needs to be filled as far as the type of messaging that was being put out there. I didn't see anybody that was really presenting the information in a way that was entertaining and lighthearted and wasn't boring, you know. And I didn't see anybody that I could relate to personally. So I was like, all right, let me go into this field. And then too, at the time I was going through things with my own like sexual health. Mm-hmm. And so I said, you know what, let me jump into this and help encourage other women and couples to become better. And so that's how it started. And at first I was like, oh, what are people going to think? Are people going to judge me? Mm-hmm. Because I knew a lot of people, but they knew me to be kind of like quiet, and they had no idea. They had no idea that this was something that I had an interest in. So when I launched the site, everyone was like, what? Where did this come from? I'm like, it's always been there. It's just, it's been innate. So that's why I decided to jump into it. I didn't see anyone that looked like me that was talking positively about sex. There were a lot of women at the time, because I started it in 2011. And between 2009 and 2011, I noticed that there were Black women that were in the space of talking about sex, but they did it in a very ratchet and tasteless way. Oh. And I was like, ugh, like, why as Black women do we have to go that route? How come, we can't be classy about it and then be embraced because of it? Because the people at the time that were doing it, they were getting a lot of followers on Twitter and all this. And it's funny because I no longer see those people tweeting or putting things out. And I felt like, oh, maybe it was a fad at the time for them, for those people, whatever. God bless your industry. But I was like, all right, I heard a lot of complaints from people about, how watching porn makes them feel dirty, how, Black women in particular were putting messaging out that just wasn't classy. And so it was a common complaint. People wanted to have a source that didn't make them feel like a creep or like a sleazeball, especially women, going to look for like sex advice. So I was like, all right, I'll do it. I don't have any shame.
I think you're right, because I know that, just even through social media sometimes even as a writer, when I'm looking at other writers that are, writing in erotica and different things like that, you do notice a larger white presence than this type of content coming from Black females. So have you noticed that it's changed? Because I know you said it was a little, maybe ratchet when you saw a need for more people to do what you're doing now. Have you seen it change over the years?
I have. And it's funny because right when I was jumping into it, I saw a trend that was about to pop off as far as sexual liberation and this new movement. And I was like, yes, let me be the first to jumpstart this. And so when I first started, I was like the only one that looked like me doing it. But then ever since I started, there's been so many women, Black women, that have come to me and said, oh, I really want to learn how you got to where you are. I want to do this, or, oh, I have a blog, support it, or, whatever. And so many women in just different aspects, like whether they sell toys or they have a blog or a radio show or a podcast or a YouTube channel, or they just put information out on Instagram or Twitter or whatever. I've seen an increase in those types of people. And then too, because I jumped into the field, it makes me more aware of the African-American people and people of color who are working in the space as well. Because you're really not aware of it unless you're really aware of the industry. And, but I feel like in mainstream, there's still a huge absence of, the person of color. And, members of the sexuality community have complained about that and continue to complain about it. Even I'm a part of a coalition called the National Coalition for Sexual Health, and I'm a part of the Communications Action Group. And even there, we've had discussions about how there is a lack of, person of color within this field, and how you can't even necessarily like point to one person that's Black and say, oh yes, this person is an authority on the subject and they get, they get the play that they're supposed to get. I mean, there's so many of us in the space though that's doing it. It's just that we don't see that mainstream representation. You literally have to know the different niches of the industry to know who's the power player, in that area. Like Juju Mama is somebody who's been speaking about like the spirituality of sex and, the progressive love, as she calls it, for a very long time, probably like over a decade. And she's been in Essence and Ebony and all this. But again, you have to be a person that subscribes to what she teaches in order to know who she is. Right. But as far as someone that's talking about, because that's so deep, like it's not even that deep, but for the average person who doesn't even understand like the basic mechanics of sex, thinking about the spirituality of sex and then also like having multiple partners, that's like so advanced for them. But so you don't see anyone that's just on like a basic level that's Black. Yeah. Talking about it on say like a Dr. Drew or the doctors. I mean, Dr. Rachel is a certified sexologist. And I think that on the show, she speaks about sex when they have certain segments. But as far as someone that's like a sexpert, you really don't see it. You don't see it in Daytime Talk. You don't see it in Cosmo, Yeah. No shade, but shade.
Hey, I tried to blog for Cosmo before and write some risque stuff. And so, yeah, it's a little bland anyway. But so you were talking about just needing that representation in mainstream media. How did you get the opportunity to be on PlayboyRadio.com? How did that come about?
Well, a friend of mine who was also on the platform at the time, she, well, I shouldn't say friend, a colleague of mine. She reached out to me for an interview. And so I just started doing my research on her, trying to figure out, man, how did she get this show? Because I've always wanted to like have the little bunny by my name. And so I just asked her, I was like, hey, how did you get that opportunity? And she's Caucasian and she's from the Midwest, just like me. So we kind of had like this kindred spirit thing going on. And she was like, oh, I hit up this person. And so she just immediately after that CC'd me in an email and did an e-introduction, and then it just went from there. And it was really that simple. Just an associate asking an associate. And because she loves my platform and my messaging, she just thought you would totally be great on this platform. And she just made the connection.
It's so wonderful when other women, help other women and support other women, because you don't get to, sometimes you don't get to the next level unless you have that support. You have to definitely work together. So it's great that you had somebody like that recognized the benefit of what you offer to Playboy Radio, because just from listening, and they have some clips up on SoundCloud, just from listening to the show, I mean, your show really runs the gamut between just doing interviews to introducing tools and techniques, talking about STD and STI prevention. And, and then you have your, and I don't know if he's a current partner, but I caught an interview where you were really just...
Oh, about phone sex, yeah. No, he's definitely not my current partner. That ended like right after that.
He's like, I don't claim him anymore, but it was still entertaining.
Oh, yeah.
So you really talk a lot. You talk about physical safety and really get detailed into, I caught an episode where you were talking about, just being safe. Don't have, an intoxicated, anonymous stranger up in your house, and not realize, what can happen from it. So you really talk a lot about a lot of different things on your show. Can you tell us more about what listeners can expect, from your show?
Well, I'm going to say this, there's just a lot of transition going on right now at Playboy Radio. And because of it, my show is on hiatus right now. Okay. I'm actually thinking about changing the concept, because even though my career is solely rooted in sexuality, a lot of times, as viewers can see on my Periscopes, even though we start talking about sex, we start going into other aspects of relationships and just life in general. And so I don't necessarily want to pigeonhole myself in my broadcasting with just like a sex academy type theme. So I decided, maybe it's time to broaden it a little bit and change it. But I have 33 episodes right now that are all going to be put up on my official Playboy Radio SoundCloud. And starting next Thursday, I'm going to be putting out Throwback Thursdays. So it'll be starting from episode 1, which was an interview with Corinne Steffens.
Yeah, let's talk about that too.
Yeah, and I was so upset because I felt like that episode and that interview did not get the airplay that it needed, and like the listenership that it needed, because the way my contract was set up with them, I didn't own my content at the time, but now I do. So I can put it out there more. And there were details about her marriage, her current marriage, that she shared with me on the show, and of course her relationship with Lil Wayne. And I love Corinne. I love her, Yeah.
And for those of you, just to insert this information, for those of you that don't know, Corinne Steffens is an infamous video vixen turned author. Not sure what else she's involved in, but I mean, like I, knew of her from like her, oh God, what was that rapper's video? But anyway, she did a lot of videos.
Ooh, Mystical?
Mystical. Yeah, so that was like the maybe like the main intro from the Mystical video, and so she's been in and out of the media, the tabloids, and attached to different men in Hollywood. But she pops up, every once in a while. And so, how fun was that interview for you?
It was fun because it was funny. I had her on my vision board 2 years ago as someone I wanted to interview, and I follow her on Twitter, and I pretty much stalk her timeline. And we know some people mutually, so I just knew like eventually I would meet up with her. And she finally followed me on Twitter, and then I hit her up like, "Hey, I know your book is coming out. I would love to interview you for ebony.com." And she was like, "Oh yeah, of course." And so from there, I just hit her with the gambit because I'm also a contributing writer for blackdoctor.org. And I was like, well, they would love to have this interview too. And then I was like, oh, my radio show. She was like, girl, you're doing a lot, but yes, I'll do it all. So when I interviewed her, it was my first time meeting her. And I was like, oh my gosh, she's so little. Everybody in Hollywood is so little. And, maybe it's just because I'm taller than the average woman. I'm 5'10", but it was great. It was like a dream come true. It was a manifestation that came into fruition. And it was great to be able to sit down with her and just feel the vibe, feel the synergy, and then develop a relationship with her, So it was dope. And she gave us a lot of good information. And I just felt like putting it back out there, people will be able to hear it now and be like, oh, she said that.
Yeah, that's true. She's really one of the first people that I've seen on TV. I know she did some type of interview around the time that Mystical video came out, where she actually came out as, a sex positive mom. Like, this is what I do, deal with it. I'm a mom and get over it. And so she's really been like, and I've seen her kind of, defend herself, just as she's promoted, some of her books, and demanded to be taken seriously, in the publishing realm. So, you have to respect people's grind, so I would definitely love to hear that interview. Another thing that I wanted to ask you about, now I know that you had an opportunity to interview Reverend Run and Tyrese of OWN's new show, It's Not You, It's Men. And so having interviewed them, I guess, after their book launch, and now seeing the show come into fruition, what are your thoughts about the show?
You know what? I'm not going to lie. I have not seen the show.
Okay.
I don't even get to really watch TV that much. And when I do, I'm usually just binging on my favorite shows. Eventually, I'm going to find it somewhere on demand or on the internet and watch it. But I was happy to see that it did develop into a show. And I knew it was going to develop into a show when the book came out, And it's just, their dynamic is just so great to me. Like, even during that interview, it was some tension that I was walking into. And I was just like, oh, really? God. Yeah, because okay, they did the Steve Harvey show before they came to do the press junket that was planned for them.
Mm-hmm.
And at first they told everybody, "Oh, you have so many minutes with them," and then they tried to pull a fast one on us and say it's going to be a group interview.
Mm.
I came there with 6 people. I came there with like 6 cameramen.
Okay.
Being extra, but so it was just some tension because they had got into it at the Steve Harvey show, and so when they came, they had an attitude with each other.
Oh, okay.
And so I was like, oh my God, I don't even know like what to do right now besides just keep my cool. And so my friend that was with me was just like, okay, I got an idea. Just have all of us go in first. Because I was like with all guys, like all guys that happened to be cameramen, still photographer. And they were like, let us go in and set up, and then you come in behind us so that way you look like a big deal. And I'm like, cool. So I could tell there was tension because like Reverend Run sitting here with his back facing Tyrese, and Tyrese is sitting with like facing forward, and I'm like, oh my Jesus. So at that point in my career, I was like, this is the biggest interview I've ever done. And you already know how it is. When you interview people, sometimes the questions that you have written out, they'll answer those questions in one question.
Right.
And so I always have like 15 questions down there, and things were going well. And I had to kind of like skip ahead in my questions. And I remember asking Tyrese about how women who haven't had a strong male presence in their life, how are they going to receive the information in the book? Because a lot of women will be like, what? And so he asked me, well, first of all, do you have a positive male figure in your life? And I kind of had to like
that.
I had to check him because I felt like he was I felt like he was trying to comfort me. And I'm like, so you assuming because I'm Black and I'm asking this question that I don't have a positive male figure in my life? And so I had to real quick and just be like, first of all, you're in Chicago, which is my hometown, number one. Number 2, I don't care if you're a celebrity, you could be Jesus himself. If I'm feeling like you're kind of coming for me, I'm gonna be like, hold on.
Right.
So I was like, yeah, I do. I have had one since the beginning of my inception to the world. So I'm asking this for other women who don't. Right. And then he kind of like, changed his tone, and I was like, oh, okay, well, that's what's up. I'm glad, right? Better be glad. And I remember my dad. Because he watches my videos and he reads my work, and he was like, I liked how you checked him. Yeah, that's my baby.
Yeah, you definitely put it out there that you have a very strong relationship with your father, and so it was a little bit weird because even as a viewer of the show, I can tell that sometimes Reverend Run comes across as a little out of touch. So he's made some interesting comments, and I know that you haven't had a chance to catch the show, but I wonder if you've heard any of the negative feedback. During an episode where they had an interview with Amber Rose, he basically stated that women should dress how they want to be addressed, which for many, of course, they felt like his comment was misogynistic and not sensitive to the fact that, we pretty much live in a rape culture, and we live in a culture where, some individuals are groomed to believe that they have a right to do things, to women's bodies, sometimes not even just women, sometimes other men, sometimes children, that they have no right doing. So what are your thoughts about, and have you heard of any of these statements coming from the show?
You know what? I have been very out of touch with the show, but I will say that some of my colleagues are not fond of the messaging that Tyrese puts out there. And some of them do feel that Reverend Run is a bit out of touch. I mean, he comes from a space of, Christian messaging, and everyone does not subscribe to Christianity, and not only that, but everyone expresses themselves differently in how they dress. And so to say you should dress how you want to be addressed, it's like, so what does that mean? What does that look like? Because if I want to be addressed as a lady, what is the definition of how a lady dresses? What does that even look like? Because what was a lady in 1945 is different than what is a lady now in 2016. Even if you just want to talk about the transitions in fashion and in silhouette and how clothes are made. So I just feel like that is a bit misogynistic to say. And it does make him seem like he's out of touch with reality. And no woman is asking to be disrespected based off of having on a top that's showing cleavage.
Right.
Like a woman like myself, I don't like wearing things that's up to my neck or like right up to my collarbone most of the time, because it makes me look even bustier. It makes me look even bigger up here. So I wear things that are a little open, because not only does it show a nice little, peak of cleavage, but it looks more flattering for my shape overall. Does that mean because I'm showing cleavage that I want to be disrespected and come at like I'm a man coming at me like, oh, baby, nice rack? No, it doesn't mean that. But what it does mean is the man needs to learn how to be respectful. Just because you see something visually that turns you on doesn't mean it gives you a right to just express how that's making you feel to a woman, especially if you know that it does come from a sexual place and it's obscene.
Absolutely.
So I don't really agree with that. And I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised that the show is getting negative feedback, because even though their dynamic is so different, I feel like too, these are two men that are kind of removed from like this new era of millennials. And just with the liberation movement, a lot of the things that we once subscribed to as a society, we no longer do. And it just needs to be put to bed. Put it in the archives, because those ways of thinking, they're not coming back.
It's definitely antiquated. On your show, you bring up common myths about women and sexuality, such as women don't enjoy sex. So let's talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, okay. The one myth of, if she's dressed scantily clad, she's asking for it. No, it doesn't mean that at all. Some women just love their bodies and they love showing off their bodies. And just because a woman wants to wear a skirt up to her coochie or a low cutting top that shows and reveals everything doesn't mean that she wants to have sex with you. Doesn't mean that she's asking for somebody to rape her. Not at all. And the huge myth is, men just have higher sex drives than women. That's not true. There are plenty of women that have high sex drives and they're insatiable. And people like to label them as nymphos or whatever. I look at nympho as a negative word because it was used in the past to diagnose a woman with a psychosis. But realistically, women are multi-orgasmic, and so we can have orgasm after orgasm after orgasm, while men typically just naturally they have one. They can learn to be multi-orgasmic, but it takes work. But women, naturally, we can have multiple orgasms. And so men just think, she's not as into sex as I am, or, it's just me being a man. But when a woman has a high sex drive and she uses her autonomy to have sex with whoever she wants, then she's seen as a whore. Or a hoe or a slut or whatever, which I don't subscribe to any of those words, because if a man can do it, a woman can do it too. It's just that I think men get upset at the fact that women can use vagina as a tool to advance themselves in society in many aspects. And I guess they feel like it's a double standard because they don't feel that they can do the same. And in a way, that's why I believe women get slut shamed. Because look at Kim Kardashian, right? Kim Kardashian had a sex tape come out, and no one will let her live that down. But it wasn't like she was a porn star. She made a sex tape with her boyfriend,
right?
And it got out, and it got marketed through Vivid, and it made money. And then she sued them and made even more money, and she put it behied her.
Made her and Ray J money.
Yep, it made them money and it made her more famous. And then, she dated. This is what people fail to realize. She dated all these guys that she's been attached to in the public. She probably had relations with people that we don't know about because it was off the record. But the ones that we know about on the record, she was with all of them. They all claimed her. They all will say, I used to date her. And so people love to slut shame her, and I'm like, but what makes her a slut? Because she was having sex with her boyfriends. And even if she wasn't, why are you judging? Why do you care so much about where her vagina's been? You know what I mean? And why is it so shameful or slutty for a woman to portray sexual acts on camera? It's an entirely legal business that is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and women are going into it with full awareness of what they're doing. The porn industry is not an industry that women are forced into. It's not like the forced sex slave trade. You know, these women sign contracts with agencies. They have managers, all of that. And Kim just made a smart move to advance herself and her family through that. And, you know, and she constantly has to defend herself. And I'm like, when will people understand that women are autonomous with their bodies the same way men are? So it's okay for a man to have his dick in his avatar, put his dick in people's inboxes just willy-nilly, but a woman decides to display her body artistically and put it on her blog site or put it on her app or leak it to the gossip sites for sensationalism, and now she's a slut whore cunt. You know, it's like the myths have to stop. You know, women are sexual beings just like men.
Right.
Our sexual energy, we both have yin and yang energy. We both have masculine and feminine energy within us. And some women are more reserved in how they decide to express their sexuality, and others don't mind being open with it and free and expressive and sharing it with the world and sharing it with whoever they choose.
Some people are repressed.
And that just needs to be accepted.
Some people are repressed and they'll never have, you know, certain experiences. From my background, for those of you who don't know, I am a writer, I'm a journalist, but, you know, I have gone to grad school for clinical mental health counseling. So within those types of programs, you are almost retrained how to think, you know, with more empathy and to think with more acceptance, you know. And the goal is really to go inward and work on developing yourself, as opposed to focusing on other people's life's choices. Definitely not judging them, because everyone has a different lifestyle, a different worldview based on their past experiences, based on the way that they were taught as they were growing up. And everybody just has, you know, a wide range of just values. You know, there are some people that don't hold your values, and it's not right or wrong. It's just different from what you believe. So, you know, my challenge is always to go into anything. And, you know, I'm human, you know, I have my biases just like everybody else, but as somebody that's working towards, you know, being in that field, I have to check myself, and I have to constantly say, you know, what is a Kim Kardashian? What is her, you know, showing her body have to do with my life? And you know, how's it impacting me? You know, and what is the conflict here when you see these types of images? Because you always have the opportunity to turn it off if it's something that you don't want to see. And certainly if you don't think that they are a role model for young women, don't show it to your child. You know, you have options in all of this, you know, but obviously her values are different from your values. And in some of your interviews, you have talked about the way that women or girls are groomed as opposed to the way that boys are groomed in dealing with accepting their bodies and expressing themselves sexually. Can you kind of expound on that a little bit?
Yeah, you know, young girls, we're always told, you know, don't let anybody touch you down there, you know. You don't sit with your legs open, always sit with your legs crossed. You know, we're taught all of these standards for how to police our bodies, or our bodies are always being policed by everyone around us. And even with masturbation, you know, when you're a young girl and you finally discover that you have a clitoris and that it feels good when you touch it and rub it, and then you realize you can have an orgasm from that, you're kind of discouraged from doing that, you know, because it's sexual. But young boys, once they have a wet dream and they start going through puberty, they are encouraged to masturbate, because they would rather a young boy go and masturbate than to go and have sex with the young lady and get her pregnant. And so it's seen as this acceptable form of sexual expression for young men, but not for young women. And I feel like that double standard is what sets women up for failure when they do become adults, because then they don't even accept or even embrace their sexual body. And I'm like, man, that's messed up, because then as an adult, you know, you get to that place where, okay, you find a man that you love and you want to let go with him, but you can't, because for years upon years upon years, this messaging has been thrown at you that just suppresses your sexuality and your expression of it. And so even though you have this freak nature and you have these things inside of you that you fantasize about and you want to explore, you're afraid, because for so long you've been told, you know, oh, that's a no-no. You know, good girls don't get on their knees because that's what whores do. Mm-hmm. You know, good girls don't give it up before marriage because that's a sin. Mm-hmm. You know, and just all of these things that will shy women away from actually being sexually expressive and autonomous over their bodies. But then it's okay. Oh, son, yeah, you did a good job. You know, you just had sex. Oh, my man. Mm-hmm. You know, pat on the back. You know, oh, you're a man now, son. Come in and talk to your old dad, you know. And I'm just like, come on. We need to stop teaching that. We need to stop separating the two. And we need to teach young men, the same things that we teach young women, or vice versa. We need to teach young women the same things that we teach young men about being autonomous over their bodies. Mm-hmm. And being expressive. And then I think that that's something that will also help with women recognizing what's consent and what's not consent, and what's rape and what's not rape, because a lot of women, they have these situations where they're violated and they don't know what to do. They don't know what to say. And they're just kind of like, you know, I feel like this was wrong, but I kind of feel bad about speaking up about it because maybe I asked for it, whatever. And it just goes right back to what you were taught as a young woman. So that just needs to stop. The same messaging needs to be delivered to both sexes, not just, it shouldn't be different.
You're right. Give me just a moment. Sometimes you have to block the trolls. Okay.
Oh. See, I've learned from blocking trolls, because I felt like, you know, I was blocking way too many trolls on Periscope, and then they shut my page down. But I finally got it back after pushing and prodding the small team of people who run Periscope. Mm-hmm. But shout out to Twitter, though, because Twitter is such a sex positive platform. Twitter has no problem with prostitutes, escorts, porn stars, sex educators. They have no problem with these women and men being expressive with their sexuality. So kudos to Twitter, because y'all the real MVP. I've never been blocked. I've been in Twitter jail for tweeting too much, but it's a sex positive platform for sure.
It seems to be. Yeah, you are basically, I guess, on tour right now, from what I've read. Headed to Charlotte. Tell us a little bit about your writing workshop.
So I had a lot of people. This one young lady, shouts out to Kanye's breasts on Twitter. She shared the class in North Carolina, and she was like, oh, this is going to be lit. And then my entire timeline just like blew up. Mm-hmm. And so I had some people, both men and women, laughing about it. And I just came back at them like, what's funny? You laughing now, but are you going to buy a ticket? Are you coming? If not, invite a friend. Mm-hmm. Or if it was a guy like laughing about it or saying something slick, I'll be like, hey, bring your girl, or tell your girl to come. I'm pretty sure she needs it. And if it was a guy that didn't have a female, he probably just stopped heckling me or whatever. But I'm doing this because I've had so many women complain from my YouTube channel. And I've made 3 videos mm-hmm. on how to get it done. But women are still confused. They're still not confident. And these women write me and they're so distraught. And they're so upset because they're like, oh my God, I just want to get this right. I just want to satisfy him, all of this. And they be feeling like complete failures because they can't get it right while being on top. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay, let me just go out on the road and teach this in person because clearly it's not working. Some women have been able to get it from the video and they write me and say, oh my God, what you suggested work. But then again, it's just still such a high demand for more. I'm like, okay, if you're not getting it in video, there isn't another video that I can make to show you. Let me just come and teach you. And so that's why I'm doing it. And it's actually an exercise class. What women don't understand about being on top, the very first thing is that it's not about him. It's not about him. It's not about him. It's not about his pleasure. It's about yours. Because when the woman's having fun, everybody's having fun. The vagina's getting more moist and tight, and you're getting close to your orgasm, and he can feel that. And if you're moaning and groaning and making faces, then he's going to get turned on, and everybody's happy. So being on top is about the woman being the star of the show. It's about her getting her pleasure, and it's her time to get the stroke that she wants. Most of the time, most of the sex positions are, you know, the man being dominant, the man stroking the woman. And I always ask women, like, if you had a penis and you were going to make love to yourself, how would you stroke yourself? And most women can't answer that because they never thought about that. So when you're on top, it's your time to stroke your man. And so you have that factor going on, knowing that you're the star of the show and you have to know what you're doing. And then you have the factor of not being in shape. Sex is a very physical activity.
Absolutely.
Being 30 minutes of rigorous sexual activity can burn 230 calories. All right. That's like being on the treadmill for about 45 minutes on a high incline. I'm just saying. So what makes you think that you don't have to be in shape to be on top? Every woman has that complaint of, oh my God, my legs burn. I'm tired in 30 seconds. Even me. I'm not in the best shape of my life right now. And if I was to have sex right now and get on top, I would probably fight through the burn to get to at least a minute of riding and then take a break and then go back at it. But your legs and your lower body has to be strong. And see, we live sedentary lifestyles because we sit down all day and it weakens our lower bodies. And as women, our lower body strength is actually, I think, twice as much as men because, you know, we have to push babies out of our lower bodies. And so we're supposed to be stronger. But when you don't have a regular workout routine, you don't stretch on the daily, you're very tight down here. Your muscles are weak. And so when you're on top of your man, you have to support your weight with your legs and with your arms and your core strength. And so if you're out of shape, of course, you're not going to enjoy being on top because you're just sitting there. So there's in this class, there's going to be some mental reframing about what it means to be on top, and then educating women about the importance of health, of physical health, for their sex lives, and then teaching them different stretches and different movements that I've learned over the course of my life through dancing, taking dance, and yoga for a few years. So these are things they can do in their everyday lives, whether it's at night, before they go to bed, or early in the morning when they first wake up, that will not only benefit them in sex, but it'll keep them healthy. Their bodies will start to shape up and they'll start to feel better about their overall appearance, because that's another thing that makes women very leery about getting on top, is knowing that their entire body is going to be exposed. And some women are very insecure about their body image. So it's going to be a good class. It's a 2-hour class.
You're talking about self-confidence, and it sounds like that's something that's going to be, you know, addressed. You said it's going to take about 2 hours and continue. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, like the class isn't going to be like 2 hours of working out, but I definitely want to first connect with the women. And the one thing I want them to do when they come into the class is they are not who they walked in as. You know, when you come into this class, you have to rename yourself as your inner freak. And that is the person that is in the class, because you have to have that confidence when you get on top. You have to know, I got this. This is my time to shine. I'm about to rock his world. You can't get up there just as Shanon, you know, as I'm talking to you right now. You have to have a Sasha to your Beyonce. That's what it is. You know, it's a performance at the end of the day. So who do you want to be today? You don't even have to be the same person every single time. And that's why people get bored with their sex lives, because they approach it so linear. And I'm like, no, it doesn't have to be the same positions every time. You don't have to be the same person every time. You don't have to use the same soundtrack every time. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you don't even have to have it in the same room every time, but people choose to because either they're just unaware of something different or they're just afraid. So when they come into the space, you got to be your inner freak. I'm going to allow the time for women to ask questions if they have them before we start, just so they can get comfortable. And then we'll have maybe like an hour and 15 of workout, and I have a sexy partner that's going to come and help me. So if the ladies want his assistance, if they're okay with being touched, he can help them with some of the stretches. And if they want to practice their new skills on him, then they can.
We have a viewer that says, thanks for authentic sex ed. So they're thanking you for that. Now,
you're welcome.
When I'm thinking about, your audience, and those that kind of reach out to you, because I do know that you have a phone line. What is your audience? Who is the type of person that says, that's humble enough, I guess, that would want to approach, a sexpert and actually take action on it and say, are these people coming to you saying, I'm, at my wit's end in my relationship, it's not, I'm not happy with my sex life, can you help? Who's your audience, and how do people arrive to the point of wanting the help of a sex expert?
It's such a broad audience. I have 15-year-olds to 65-year-olds that hit me up. White, Black, Hispanic, Indian, Belizean, because I have my YouTube channel and I'm almost at 100,000 subscribers there, and I have like millions of views there. It's a world population audience. Most of my audience is concentrated in the United States, and it's a good mix between men and women, but I do have a lot of virgins that approach me, and of course they have their insecurities. I just had a 15-year-old write me and ask me, is 15 too young to have sex? And I haven't responded to that yet. And I'm actually at a space where I cannot answer all these questions individually because it's very time consuming and it doesn't make me money just to answer questions, but I can answer them, on YouTube and videos. But, the person that comes to me, typically they're insecure, or they're just, like you said, at their wit's end, and they don't know what to do. And the one thing that draws them in is just me being authentic and them knowing that I am a person that is actively expressing and exploring my sexuality. This isn't just someone that's reading from a book, and has book knowledge. This is someone that can say, oh, I put this thing into practice and it actually worked. And so it's really all over the place. I do have a lot of women who are curvy. They hit me up, or they're plus size or BBW, whatever you want to call plus size women. And they always thank me for, using myself as an example, because I'm not a small woman. And often when we see representations of like sexual acts being performed, we don't see a larger woman doing her thing. And it doesn't seem like it's normalized. Even like the sexual images that we see being used to advertise products and stuff, we never really see a curvy woman. And it's funny because most of America is about a size 12.
Right.
As far as women are concerned. And so it's really across the board. It's men in relationships that's like, I'm about to cheat, I need help, so I don't do it. There's people who have fetishes, they just don't know how to explore them. There are men who are bisexual or they don't know if they're bisexual or if they're gay, and they need help with, reframing their thoughts about that. There's newlywed couples who just don't know what they're doing. I mean, it's so many people. And when I get people from like India that write me, or the Philippines or Guam, which Guam to me is like the furthest place on the earth besides Antarctica, but just even that, like, it's just amazing. Sex unifies us all. It connects us all, and everybody's having problems. Everybody, no matter what color you are, what age you are. I had a 60-year-old woman hit me up and asked me about, vaginal dryness and just her being at a new peak in her life. And she wants to know how to spice it up at 60 years old. There are geriatric people having sex. And so it's all over the place. It really is.
When you're talking about, because I know that, that population, the older population is also, besides, young teenagers, is also a population that, where the rate of STDs is rising because they don't have that, they don't have that education. In your work, you do a lot of education about the prevention of STDs and the prevention of STIs. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's so simple and basic. It's like the most basic sex ed you can get. Use condoms, make sure you're getting tested, make sure you know the status of your partner, and make sure you get tested regularly. And then just knowing that most STDs or STIs are asymptomatic. Some of them do not. Most of them don't pop up with symptoms. And like I know someone that, she went to go and get her birth control refilled, and she just got tested because her doctor offered it to her, and she had something, and she was shocked because she was in a monogamous relationship, and she thought that he was monogamous too, and she didn't even know when she caught it. She didn't even know when she had it because she had no symptoms. And so that needs to be known. People think, oh, let me just look at the pussy. Oh, let me just look at the penis. Oh, it's fine. There's no pus, no warts, blah, blah, blah. And visually, yeah, that's good to do, but that does not mean that there isn't something there that's present, and sometimes STIs can lie dormant and then just rear their ugly head one day. And now you're like, oh my God, where did I get this from? Because it was lying there for 5 years and then boom, it just hit you one day. Wow. So, and of course, the main thing that's pushed in America is abstinence education for the 22 states that actually require sex ed in their high schools. And I just don't that's not comprehensive sex education, especially in these days and times where you have teenagers that are trans. And you have teenagers that are openly gay. That's not really teaching them how to be safe. Just telling them don't do it. So, and two, being aware of your body and being aware of how it functions can also tell you when something is going wrong. I always know when my pH is off because my discharge is a little funny or it's itchy down there. Oh, a yeast infection is coming. Okay, what do I need to eat to make sure the candida gets cleared up? I can always feel when a UTI is coming on. Oh, my bladder is tingling right now. So, but it takes a person that's very self-aware to be at that point. And so it should never get to a point where if there are symptoms present, like a fishy smell or something that you think that's normal, you have to know how your body functions normally to be able to know when something's off. So STD and STI prevention is like the most basic level of sex ed that everybody should already have a knowledge of, but it's just sad that that education in itself isn't even considered a requirement for young people. When I was growing up, and it wasn't even that long ago that I was in high school, my 10-year reunion is this year. So when I was in school, we had to take sex ed and we had to pass it with a passing grade. Even in the 5th grade, they took us to this sex research center here in Illinois called Robert Crown. Split us up in, male, female. We learned about the reproductive organs. We learned about conception. We learned about procreation and desire and all this in 5th grade. And now it's like, wow, they don't even have that. And I don't understand what changed in the last 15 years. Oh, yes. America is going backwards in its standards for sex ed. And I don't understand why when everything else is so sexually charged. The music is sexually charged. The advertisement is sexually charged. On TV, you are seeing same-sex couples actually entering into sexual activity. And you never see condoms being pulled out or used in these situations. Everything's always very spontaneous. So if you have teenagers that are watching this programming, they're just thinking, oh, if I want to have sex, just go for it. No, don't just go for it. Grab a condom. Even with condom education, it's so antiquated. Like, and the kids of today are so far removed from the condoms that were put out in the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
And I always think to myself, like, how can you even say that condoms don't feel good or smell good or wherever when you haven't even done your experimentation with condoms? You know, you haven't even put one on, don't even know how to put one on because you don't have the education, even though there is a diagram in the box.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a little sheet of paper comes in a condom box that teaches you how to put it on correctly. And even that's really important, because if condoms can be used and you can still catch something if it's not used correctly. If it's not put on correctly, if it's not the right size, you can still get something. And I mean, the STIs that are transferred by skin to skin contact, which is herpes and HPV, you cannot prevent that.
Right.
You can't prevent using condoms. And so it's important to know that as well. So if you do see someone that has like scarring from like bumps, that's an indication. Oh, this person has active outbreaks. This person has warts. Maybe I shouldn't have sex with this person if I don't want to get it. And you can have sex with someone that has genital herpes and never get it. I know someone personally that was involved with a woman that had it, and for 2 years, and he never got it. So it's kind of like a toss up there, but still, that needs to be known, and that education needs to be spread. And I just think that it's unfortunate that high schools are not seeing that as important. And it's really up to the state. It's not up to the federal government to implement those programs. It's up to the actual state legislation, and then right down to the school districts. And so it's like layers. It's layers of approval. And I think that's so dumb. I think that the federal government should just require it. The World Health Organization and the Center for Disease Control should really like lobby for that, because it's getting real out here. These STDs are mutating, and they're becoming resistant to the medications on the market, gonorrhea specifically, and chlamydia is on the rise as well. And the World Health Organization came out with a statistics that said that 75% of the world population has herpes simplex 1. And that's, of course, like, you know, cold sores or whatever, but when it's transferred from the mouth to the genitals, it becomes genital warts.
Absolutely.
75% of the world population has herpes simplex 1.
Yeah. No,
that made it very easy for me to go into celibacy. I was like, yes.
I'm not surprised. You know, the statistic that I read from the CDC was saying that estimates suggest that young people between the ages of 15 to 24 are acquiring half of all new STDs. One of our viewers is stating that as parents, we have to be more pro-sexual health, you know, over anti-sex. We have to teach, you know, start to teach a different message, because we're in an era where we can take HIV tests at home. We have all sorts of, you know, protection that's available to us, you know, where there's not it's not as big of a stigma to have a condom, you know, even if you are a female in these days. But there are just these ways that people are not utilizing to protect themselves. And as we stated before, it's on up into, you know, the 60s, the 70s, whatever. People are just not educating themselves. And so, you know, how do you feel about that? And I don't know, you know, was that the type of environment that you were raised in? Was it pro sexual health, bottom line, you know, in your household as you were coming up?
My mom was just pro body, period. When my sister and I started going through puberty, she brought us this amazing book that I suggest every mother buy their daughter. And it's by American Girl, and it's called The Care and Keeping of You. And this book teaches you about how to care for yourself, how to clean yourself, when you grow underarm hair, how to shave it, how to shave your legs, how to insert a tampon, what to do, you know, during your period, you know, how to dispose of pads, how to check for breast lumps and leakage. Like, this book went in, and she gave this to us when we were in the 5th grade. And we used to pass it around to all of our friends, our girlfriends. And some of the guys got a hold of it. And I remember our principal making a big deal out of it and actually calling us to the office and calling our mother and saying that the book was inappropriate. And my mom said, so it's inappropriate for me to be teaching my girls about their bodies. Is that what you're telling me? You know, and so my mom and my dad have both always been very positive about just body and self-care. My parents they've always instilled in me the necessity of making sure that you look presentable when you go outside and you wash yourself daily, all that good stuff. So when it came to sex, you know, the messaging in our house was really, if you want to have freedom, don't have babies. If you want to be able to live your life, don't have babies before. And I grew up in church, you know, very religious. And so it was always encouraged to save it to marriage. But my mom was not like so hard pressed on that because she understood that, you know, eventually you're going to have, you know, hormones raging. And so whenever you're ready, just know that you make that decision and that it's your choice, and just be safe and use condoms. So she always advocated for safer sex and, you know, getting tested and the pill and all that stuff. And so she always educated us about that. And then when the time was right, took us to the gynecologist. And, you know, she even told us about the gynecologist before we were like that age. She sat us down and said, you know, eventually when you get of age, I'm going to have to take you to the gynecologist. And she explained to us all of what will be done. You know, she's going to use a speculum and put it in and swab around in there and ask you questions. And she's going to fill in your pelvis and fill in your boobs. Don't feel weird about it. And she had this talk with us consistently so that way we wouldn't be freaked out, because there are grown women that, you know, especially those that haven't had kids, they have never been to the gynecologist or never had a pap smear. And I'm like, what? You know, I'm like, how is that possible?
What's going on down there?
And right. And it was funny because I was leaving the gynecologist one day and this lady stopped me and was like, hey, who did you see in there? And, you know, I'm a sex educator, so I didn't feel the conversation was weird, but I did feel weird about being approached about who was just up in my vagina. You know what I mean? But she was 45 years old and had 2 sons, and she was just recently divorced, and she met this guy, you know, they were dating, and so they were going to take it to the next level. And she was so scared because she had no idea about STDs and STIs because she had been with one man her whole life, and she didn't feel that she needed that information. And so she was so confused, and she felt judged by the gynecologist that she saw, and she felt weird about asking her about anything when it came to sex. And so I recommended my gynecologist because she's pretty awesome, and we talk about everything just how we're talking here. And it was just amazing to me that this woman that had 2 children didn't know anything about her sex organs or safer sex because she was married, and she just assumed, you know, because I'm monogamous, I don't need, you know, to know about safer sex. I don't need to use condoms. And I'm like, man, you need to at least know for your children. Educate yourself for your children so that your children don't grow up repressed and unaware and then put themselves in harm's way. Because the rates of HIV amongst young people is very alarming, especially in the African American community.
And you're really focused. You're talking about, you know, how important it is to have that open communication between children and parents. And I know for me, as you know, the mother of a toddler, who is so funny that you would mention that book, The Care and Keeping of You, because I did a Huffington Post live segment with the author. She's not the original author, but she was tasked with updating that edition. So it's interesting that you would bring it up as something that was relevant into helping to educate you. And relevant. So hopefully, you know, it's still something that, you know, will be helpful to moms and to girls that are growing up today. That's good to get that feedback. But
that book needs to be standard.
That's good. I'm going to have to check it out myself. Like I said, I have my daughter just turned 3 years old, but I know for me, it's really important for me to really just, and with all my children, I don't want to control them. They're their own individuals.
Right.
And so my parenting style is really just, helping them to understand that they have autonomy over their bodies, that they have rights, even though they are children. I hope that they will always come to me, to talk to me about certain things. And certainly, even though I did grow up in the Church of Christ and my mother was a devout Christian and both of my parents, brought us up in the church, I always had my own thoughts about things, and I always wanted to investigate things for myself. So, I was that child that was asking about, why is masturbation wrong in Sunday school? Like, being ignored, like anyway, Matthew chapter,
glossing right over it.
But, and I remember, I would have these moments, and even though, like I said, my mom has always been very, proper and just very, traditional, I think she still had the sense of, Shanon is her own person and she's going to pretty much do what she wants.
Right.
So, I was thinking about, I came of age, and I'm, originally from Virginia, but I came of age. I turned 21 in the Bay Area. I was living in California at the time. And I always suggest, definitely, move across the country one time in your life, away from your family and your friends. And that is really how you begin to gain independence and kind of come into your own, because you don't have that girlfriend going, girl, I wouldn't do that. And your mama going to fight that. No, you don't have to deal with all that. So you can really kind of start to explore. But, I had a cousin at the time who was modeling and, running in different social circles. And, I remember calling up my mom, and this was back in like 1999. Yeah, I'm slightly older than you. 1999, 2000. And, they still had these events that they don't even have, anymore. But they had I think it was called Exotica Erotica, some type of ball that they would have in San Francisco. And people don't understand that, on Halloween, people just walk around with no clothes on Halloween in certain areas of San Francisco. They would just take it there. They would have like an apron on backwards, and that'd be their costume. I'm like, no, sir. So it's very open and very expressive.
Very open.
So I remember calling my mom up and saying, do you want to know what I am for this Halloween? She'd be like, no, not really.
That's not like my mom.
Like, I don't need to know, and I'd be so happy, I'd have found like a new whip or something. I'd be like, you sure you don't want to know?
Right.
So she'd be like, no, but I certainly hope that, as my children grow up, not just my daughter, but as my children grow up, that they'll be free to, have certain conversations with me and not feel like, oh, mom is going to judge me, and also feel like they can come to me for information, because that's what it seems like we are missing, that communication component, when it comes to children not understanding what is risky sex, the fact that they can get, STDs and STIs from oral sex, and, not even being clear on what oral, what sex is, because, what do you think you're doing down there, and so there's a lot of stereotypes, a lot of myths.
A lot of people don't think that you can get things from oral sex, and I'm like, where did you hear that at? I hear men all the time that say, well, I only get head because, it's safer than vaginal sex, and I'm like, who told you that? Did you know you can catch things in your throat? Did you know that there are things on your mouth that can be transferred, just skin-to-skin contact? And again, like you said, people don't even know what sex is. Everybody defines sex differently. Some people say, if an orgasm is happening, then it's sex. Some think, oh, if I didn't have an orgasm, it's not sex. Oh, if it's not penis in vagina, it's not sex. Oh, if it's If it's anal, then it means I'm still a virgin if I don't ever get penetrated in my vagina. And I'm like, something's still being inserted into your body. That is sex, but everyone defines it differently. And even if you do define it differently, you just still need to know, again, what is risky. If you're having sex with multiple partners unprotected, that's risky. If you're having sex and the condoms don't fit you, that's risky. If you're having sex inebriated, that's risky. If you're having sex with multiple people at one time and you're inebriated, that's risky. It's, people don't want to think about the physical, emotion, and emotional consequences that come along with sex. People don't want to think about the other side, which is taking precautions. Everyone only wants to speak about, how do I do it better? How do I make it more pleasurable? How do I become the ultimate lover? People don't want to talk about, how do I be safe with this? What does consent look like?
Yeah.
And it baffles me because I'm like, so basically you're admitting that you're okay with rape. You're okay with rape because the only thing you want to focus on is just, how do I do it better? How do I get a woman to have sex with me? How do I rock his world? Like, I just had a message and it kind of bothered me. And so I had to respond to this directly. A young lady wanted to know, this guy is trying to friend zone me. So I need some tips to rock his socks off so I can be his girl. And I'm like, girl, that's not going to matter. I said, if he's friend zoning you, stay in the friend zone. I said, because if you have sex with him and you're trying to knock his socks off, he's going to put you in the fuck friend zone. And you don't want to be there because all I'm going to do is just use you. And you're going to be in this rigmarole in your mind where you think just because you have physical intimacy with him that you have a relationship. Yeah, you do have a relationship, but it's not romantic. And so it just bothers me that people care more about the physical intimacy than they do about anything else. They don't want to know the risks. They don't want to know the precautions they need to take before going into it. You have to know that. That's necessary because you don't want to live your life with something that you'll have to be on medication every single day to treat.
Right.
You don't want to have an unintended pregnancy that may push you into now having to make the hard decision of either terminating that pregnancy or living with the child for the rest of your life that you're not prepared for or quite possibly just didn't want. And there are consequences. Sex is fun. It's great. It's liberating. It's spiritually uplifting when it's used in the right way. And it can be used to manifest great things into your life besides children, but you have to know the other side of things. You have to.
Those are all great points. And you brought up basically watching films and where you don't see, even TV shows where you see couples that are actually in an act, but, they're not introducing any form of birth control or STD protection. I read somewhere that you are directing films for royal fetish films. So
I just did one.
She did one. Tell us just about one. What viewers can expect and what you hope to add to that realm of entertainment when you agreed to do that project.
Well, the project was actually my first fetish assignment. Jet Setting Jasmine is a dynamic duo comprised of Jasmine and Jet Setting Jasmine herself and King Noir. And they are in the BDSM kink fetish space, and they are fetish coaches. So since I am in celibacy this year, I decided to explore other aspects of my sexuality and different expressions. And fetish is something that's always called me, but it's always kind of intimidated me. And so I decided, don't be intimidated, just find someone who can help you understand it. And this beautiful couple came along and I was like, oh, would you guys like to, coach me? So my first assignment was, well, first of all, I had to fill out a survey, an extremely long survey that was filled with all these fetishes, many of which I had never seen before in my life. Just because I'm a sexpert doesn't mean I know everything. A sexpert is always learning. A sexpert is always evolving and developing in life and learning from life. And the fetish arena is such it's so vast and it's so new to me.
Mm-hmm.
So it's exciting to be in that space. And so the first assignment after filling out this survey of what were like hard yeses and hard nos and some maybes for my fetishes was to explore my strong fetish of being a voyeur through being a producer of one of my fantasies with them as the stars. And they do this consistently with their clients as well. They allow their clients to act out, direct and film their fantasies with them as stars. So we filmed it at AVN in Las Vegas in January. And what viewers can expect to see is my interpretation of what I find to be sexy. So my fantasy was to see Jasmine in a collar and to be dominated by King. And her job was to give him amazing head. And if she did a good job, then she would get rewarded with orgasmic sex. But I wanted the room to be lit where it was kind of shadowy. I think that an ambiance being set is 100% necessary for great sex to be happening. And I love an ambiance that's like dimly lit. It's just really sexy to me. The shadows, when they're cast on the body, can make things look a little different, while you're having sex. Your body may be shaped a little differently, or your partner's body may be shaped a little differently because the shadows are hitting in a certain place. And it could look really sexy. So King lit the room in the way that I desired, and then it was my job to direct them. And after a while, I just fell silent because they were just doing their thing, and I didn't want to interrupt their natural chemistry. And I remember at one point, my hand kind of like reached in and touched them while they were doing their thing, and I felt like I violated, but I was extremely turned on by just watching and filming and just like getting certain angles or whatever. But there are some clips up on Twitter. If you follow at King Noir, KINGNOIRE, he has a few clips up on his page, and so does Jet Setting Jasmine. And it's just really sexy. It's called Collared in Shadows, and you can check it out. There's a clip up on X Videos. And I think if you search Royal Fetish Films on X Videos, you can see it. But yes, it was produced by me and filmed by me. So I was behind the camera. And a lot of people like got it twisted when I first put it out there, like put this assignment out. They thought that I was going to star in the video. And I was like, y'all can't read. I was like, y'all can't read. I said, I am filming my first adult film behind the camera. And I guess people just kind of cut off the behind the camera part. I was like, oh my God, she's like, people were in my inbox like, so when the video coming out? I'm like, I'm not in it, bruh. You didn't read it right. So I think some people were let down because the world just wants to see in action. But I just believe that something should be kept sacred. I write about my sexual experiences. I'll talk about them, but I won't name names. I'll never put real names in my stories. I don't mind telling my stories, but I just don't feel that the world needs to be in the bedroom with me. Now, do I enjoy people watching? Of course, yeah. That's a very hard fetish of mine. I love that. But that's for being in the moment. That's not for putting that on camera to sell or to have the public view.
And a part of, being sex positive is understanding your own boundaries, and then not really discriminating against those who chose to do it, or choose to do it, because obviously if it wasn't a popular form of entertainment, it wouldn't be everywhere, so so
I'm all for pornography. Some of the expressions, some of the artistic expressions I'm not really fond of, because again, porn is produced from the perception of the person behind the camera, from the director's perspective. And so it's the director's interpretation of what's sexy and what's acceptable. And I don't always agree with their views. And I don't necessarily watch porn as heavily. And it's funny, I literally just had a conversation today, a few hours ago, with a friend of mine who works in the industry, and she was just telling me how like a lot of girls are not working right now because the industry, a lot of these companies they've shot so much work that they don't really need to shoot right now, but then the work is getting pirated online. And but then I hear so many complaints though from consumers, specifically that there isn't like quality black porn out there. And there isn't a variety of body shapes out there either. And so eventually, not right now, but eventually I do plan to put out forms of adult entertainment that can meet those needs, because people really do miss having storylines. People do want to see realistic interpretations of sex. I mean, people can argue that amateur porn is that, but amateur porn to me is it just looks trashy to me, you know, in certain representations. And I don't knock it if some people really enjoy that. Personally, like I like Rock and Shay. They're cool because they're a couple and the sex looks very authentic. It doesn't look like, you know, it was a production with the whole like production shoot scenes and all this. Like they look like they set up their camera and then they just go, which is great. I love that. But I don't knock it. You know, anybody that does porn, like I said, I have friends that work in that aspect of the industry, and I 100% respect what they do because it is a business and it is a job. And they do make money for what they do. And there's nothing wrong with that, you know, but that's just not for me.
Right.
Personally.
Well, when I read about that, I was wondering if, you know, if that's kind of a direction that you felt like, you know, more women, you know, need to be in, because definitely you need to be able to see, you know, images that look like you. And also, you know, obviously it's a male dominated industry. So, you know, if there were more women making films, it wouldn't look the same way, you know. And it has a trend, and I know that there's a trend now. There was actually, and I want to say it was directed by Rashida Jones, but there is a documentary available, I want to say, on Netflix, and it's talking about, well, the subject of the film is, you know, young girls that are going into the porn industry now, and how, you know, some of these people might be good for, you know, 3 films, you know, before they get, you know, tired of them, quote unquote, tired of them, you know, and send them back to their regular life. And the type of films that they are doing right now, the trend is these really hardcore films where it looks like they're being raped. It looks like, you know, they're if they're doing any type of oral sex, you know, they have to gag, they have to throw up. So it's really gross. Well, I shouldn't say gross. Not attractive to me. Not, you know, not something that I would want to see, but certainly caters to, you know, a different audience. And these are the types of films that are being put out by males, you know. So, like I said, when I read that, I was wondering if you were looking to add just a different voice to that arena.
I just want to add the romance back, the storylines, because people literally watch porn to try to figure out what to do. And so because they're only seeing this hardcore stuff, they think that women like that, but women don't like that. And it also intimidates the virgin, you know, because the virgin's like, well, I don't have a dick as big as his, and, you know, I don't even know where to stick it, so I can't even, you know what I'm saying? Because it seems way too advanced, and they don't even know if they can get a hard on as strong as they see in those videos. And so I just think that there needs to be the, you know, the foreplay before the actual intercourse happening. Like, that needs to be seen, because all you see usually is the video comes on and it's like, ooh, you know, and then you just maybe have a little bit of kissing, and then there's some kissing on the breasts, and then it goes to the oral, or sometimes not even, you know, she goes down on him, and then he just, you know, you don't even see like lube in these films. You know, they always use saliva, which dries up so quickly because it's complete water, and it makes it feel worse. And the women aren't even turned on before they're, you know, going into the experience. Like, I've been on porn sets. I've seen it with my own eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's crazy because, yeah, a lot of these girls are coming into this industry and they're getting burnt out fast because they're doing all the hardcore stuff first. And that's not how it's supposed to go. If you really want to have longevity in the industry, you start out with very basic things like a solo masturbation scene, you know, or just a blowjob scene or a hand job scene or something like that. Anal sex, gang bangs, bukakes, gag, like not necessarily gagging, but like anal, DP, even biracial sex is considered to be like the highest. If you're a white girl coming into the industry and you go into biracial, you're done. You're done. The minute you have sex, and it's the porn industry is very racist. I just want to let you know that. It's very racist. But if you're a white woman and you have sex with a black guy, you're done. And James Dean, who's like one of the top male performers in the industry, came out and spoke about that, and he expressed his grievances with it because he has his own production company and he couldn't find white women that wanted to, you know, enter into the biracial scenes because they would always say that, oh, you know, I want to save that for later in my career, blah, blah, blah. But I have a friend, you know, Sarah J, who she does interracial all the time, and she's been in the industry for quite some time, and she's probably one of the most popular porn stars in the world. And so she's had longevity in her career, but things have changed over the years and the standards have changed. And you know what? The treatment of black women in porn is so like night and day from women who are Latina or white or European.
How's that?
The pay scale is different. The treatment on set's different. The requirements on set. One of my friends, I'm not gonna put her name out there, but I remember in 2014 when I went to AVN, I sat in the room with a lot of the girls after they were done on the floor. We were all just having a big smoking session and just talking because their feet were hurting. Like, these girls do these expos and these conventions and they're standing on concrete for 6 to 7 hours in heels. Platforms at least like that tall, you know what I mean? So they're tired and their fans are very demanding and want everything for little to nothing, you know? And so one of the girls that I know that works in the industry, she said, I remember being on set one day and not only was I getting paid less than the white star of the movie, but they didn't have a makeup artist for me and they didn't have wardrobe for me. And they spent most of their time and their attention on her. So she had to do her own makeup. She had to make sure her own hair was together. She had to bring her own outfits. And she was like, you'll be lucky as a black girl if you show up to set and they have someone there for you specifically. And even though I had heard things before this day, I was really shocked because then all the other girls started chiming in because most of the women in the room were of color or, well, yeah. Most of the women in the room were of color. There might have been like 1 or 2 girls in there that weren't. And it really opened up my eyes because I was like, wow, I'm so glad that I didn't decide to go that route of trying to be a porn star because it would have been a waste of my time. And I would have felt like I was advocating for something that wasn't going to change. And it's just crazy because the pay scale is off by hundreds of dollars. Not just a few dozen, hundreds of dollars. And I'm like, dang, that's kind of bugs. And then if you're a thicker black girl, you know, if you have a big booty and big boobs, you know, you're not really used in mainstream unless it's like one of those videos that's like big ass is number 4 or something like that. But for the most part, they like to use the girls that are a little more petite, you know, and they're
really almost like mainstream media, but slightly worse in porn. But you know, other actresses will talk about some of the same issues: less pay, nobody knows how to do their hair, if they even provide hair and makeup for you.
Oh yeah.
So, yeah,
it's like black girl # black girl problems, period. Because even if being a model for me, you know, I've had to learn how to do my own hair, my own makeup. Because number one, it saved me money from having to pay someone else to do it. But as a model, you know, sometimes I would go on sets or be in fashion shows where either there were so many models that the makeup artist wouldn't be able to get to you in enough time, or she did not have the foundation to match my complexion. And I was like, y'all not about to have me out here looking like Casper the Friendly Ghost. So I'm going to learn how to do it on my own. And it's just crazy how much has evolved in the last few years. Even the cosmetics industry, how they now have more shades, more variety of shades to match our complexions. And it's just so many things in the world that I look at and I'm like, you know what? I wish it was different, but I know what battles to fight and which ones not to. And I have a complete understanding that there are entities at work in this world that control certain things that I cannot control, but I can navigate through it. You know, stressing myself out, and instead of being negative about these things, just be positive within all things and just say, you know what, that's not for me. I'm gonna leave that over there. If I ever decide to get involved in that, I know exactly where I need to place myself and just keep it moving. Because if I focus on all the stuff that's wrong in the world, it would just like stress me out so bad.
I agree. And just for anybody that's tuning in, just be aware we're not going to have Tayomi all night. We're not that fortunate. But if you have any questions, we may have some time at the end. Go ahead and ask. You can hit /Q to ask a question that you want directed to Tayomi, and we'll take care of that at this time. I did want to get into just one other thing, and this is a quote from a graphic that was attached to a recent interview that you did online, which basically where you stated, the Black person has been sexualized for generations. Sex with Black people has been viewed as taboo for certain cultures, but for some, sex with Black people is the closest thing to having sex with God. So I kind of want to get into Black sexuality, particularly as it pertains to women and what we have to face. And even when we do venture into, you know, dating interracially, where we have to deal with men that are kind of fetishizing, you know, like being with a Black woman and these types of things, these types of issues that we have to deal with. And even when we date within our race, still being a woman, you know, out in the world that is accepting of her sexuality and maybe even considered liberating is still a challenge.
It's like, where do you start with this? Because it's so convoluted. Well, let's start with the first part of the sexual history of the Black woman in America. We're not even going to talk about Africa, but just America alone. You know, the Black woman was used as a breeding bull, you know, to breed more child slaves that eventually become adult slaves, you know, raped by the slave master, out of used as a way to control, number one. And number two, just because he knew that he could. And two, think about it. He's sitting up there on that porch with the whip, looking at these busty, thick women out there in the sun picking cotton. You see these big booties in the skirts, and you're getting aroused because your white wife doesn't look anything like that, you know. And your white wife probably not having sex with you on a regular anyway. So you get to go and do whatever you want because these are your property. You know, you can do what you want with your property. So the Black woman was not seen as a woman, but just as like a piece of cattle, you know. And when slavery was abolished, what did not happen was an amendment of that thought process. No one came and apologized to the Black woman and the Black man to say, hey, we're sorry for what we did to you. As far as your sexuality is concerned, you are a person and you do have sexual rights and autonomy over your body. That was not given back to us. So what we were given, though, is a Bible. And that Bible has all types of messaging about what we can and cannot do with our bodies. And Black people held and claimed. They could cling to that. My latch hook just got stuck in my hair. But yes, okay. we cling to that so deeply. And so now you just have generation upon generation of repression. And that's where we are still in 2016, because parents take those lessons and they pass them down to their kids, right? So here it is in 2016, you have the Black woman who is she's beginning to become more aware, because the earth as a whole is moving into a higher vibration of consciousness and people are waking up. But then she's confused and she doesn't know where to go to kind of like support that journey, because she doesn't have anybody in mainstream space that looks like her. They can guide her into what this liberation looks like and how to handle that. And then all the messaging out there isn't supportive of the Black woman going out and seeking her sexuality. When we see sexually liberated women, it's typically someone of the non-Black persuasion, and I'm not mad at that at all. But we do need to see more representations of Black people in positive sexual situations. Like, even if you go and Google like sex positions, usually you'll see caricatures drawn. But when those caricatures are drawn, it's typically like from the outline or shape of a Caucasian person or someone that is non-Black. And so it doesn't make a Black woman feel like she's wanted. It doesn't make it makes us feel like we don't have like that permission. And really, you don't need permission from anybody. You give yourself permission, but still, we're always looking for that validation from outside of ourselves. And so then you look at this and this whole jungle fever thing. It's like, I don't know where it happened, but somewhere throughout time, sex with the Black woman has just been fetishized, just as sex with the Black man, the mandingo. And maybe it started with like, people of the bush or whatever. But there are societies that do worship the Black person as God. It's seen throughout Europe, erected statues that are so many hundreds of feet high, that are Black people, and they worship them as gods, the Black Madonna and Child, so that's real. You can go and research that and see it for yourself. And so that's why I said, in some cultures, sex with a Black person is the next thing, like like to having sex with God, because people do worship us in that way. But then you do have those people who it's just a fetish. It's like, oh, well, I heard once you go Black, you don't go back, or whatever, or blacker than berries, sweeter the juice. Oh, I just want to know what it feels like to be inside of a Black woman's vagina. And it's like, all are created equal. But just because my skin is brown doesn't mean that my sex is any different than the next woman. Like, you can have sex with me and it'd be totally whack because we don't sync up on a chemistry level. Our genitals don't match up, and it has nothing to do with me being Black. But I will say this though, it is totally known that certain cultures do have certain genitalia, like Asian men. And my sister is like, she goes in about this because she's a nurse. She sees penises all day long because she has to take care of patients, and she will tell you Asian men typically have smaller penises. Well,
I have to interrupt and it's because I'm with the Asian man. I don't have that problem.
But see, it's not all Asian men. I said
the whole population, but I'm just trying to tell you.
And then it depends on what type of Asian man, because you got a variation of Asian, Indian men are Asian. I
don't have that problem.
So but typically, and then you have to think about it like, so the Asian man is made for the Asian woman, but again, there are those variations where it's like you don't have to stay within your race, and genitals matching really does matter. And so sometimes I'm like, okay, some of you guys are kind of reaching because you're working with something that may not be able to please a woman that has a big booty. I talked about it on Periscope one day. I was like, some of you guys have 4 inches of penis erect, which there's nothing wrong with that at all, because 4 inches it can be so satisfying. It has been for me in my life personally. But then you're trying to have sex with a woman with 52-inch hips from behind. And it's like, you kind of don't match up there. But, I just think that the Black person needs to realize one thing. You don't need permission from anybody to be expressive with your sexuality. You don't need permission to be who you are. Whatever you feel within yourself internally is right, then you explore that and you give yourself permission. And just knowing that you're an autonomous person, no one is going to control your sexuality for you. That's something that you have to explore and become a master of on your own. And if you let your past history or if you let the opinions of others keep you in a box, that's your own decision.
Mm-hmm.
There isn't anyone in society that is directly telling the Black person that it's not okay to be sexually expressive. There is no one in the sex industry on the education side that's going to promote that type of messaging, because we all believe that sex is for everyone. It unites everyone. And we're sex positive for all nationalities, all sexual preferences, all genders, and all nationalities. And so it just always intrigues me to see that, you know, Black people are still repressed. And I just think that that's just from generational conditioning versus societal conditioning, because society is not sending negative messaging to the Black person and saying, you cannot be sex positive or you can't be sexually expressive. I've never seen that. So it comes from within, and it's just passed down from generation to generation. And Black people, we gotta stop that. We have to stop that. And we have to say, okay, you know what? As a people, we're going to get educated and we're just going to control this for ourselves. We don't have to wait for the white man to say, hey, Black person, you know, you can do whatever you want with your sexuality. It's like you should just be in that awareness because you're autonomous over yourself.
Yeah, those are some good, you know, just final points, because as you mentioned, I mean, who are our role models? Who are the people that are popular in the media? We have people like, you know, society reveres people like Beyonce and people like Nicki Minaj, and these are the images that they put out there. So, you know, they're open about, you know, nudity and dressing a certain way, but then you have, you know, a lot of Black women that are growing up, you know, with grandparents that are really strong in the church, and, you know, parents that are really strong in the church that have taught them, you know, this inner dialogue that is always going, you know, when they meet a new man, and, oh, well, he's not my husband, and he's not, you know, he's not this, he's not that, I shouldn't be doing that, you know. And so they always have that internal dialogue of what a good girl is and what you're supposed to be doing, you know, to land a husband and keep a husband, and, you know, and maintain your relationship. So, you know, it can be really, really challenging, you know, as a woman, but, you know, certainly as a Black woman, kind of navigating, you know, the world when you want to be, you know, just confident in yourself and confident in your sexuality. Are there any closing tips that you want to give to not just Black women, but women about kind of, you know, just really what if they're, you know, and it doesn't matter what age they are. What if they are at the point where they feel like, okay, you know what, I'm not happy and I'm not fulfilled, whether they're single or in a relationship, you know, where they start learning how to be more body positive, learning how to be more sex positive.
It starts with self, definitely, and it starts with going within, because you have to really question the current thoughts that you have about sexuality. You have to, whenever a thought pops up, ask yourself, is this something that I truly believe? Is it truly coming from within, or is it something that I've been told to believe? It really takes a retransforming of your mind in order to get to that space where you're comfortable. Because once you start like compartmentalizing what's your thoughts and what has been told to you to think, then you can throw all the stuff that you were told away and you're only left with your own thoughts. Then when you have your own thoughts, now you have to figure out, okay, what do I do with this? So now I know that I'm comfortable with X, Y, and Z, and I'm not comfortable with A, B, and C. How do I get comfortable with the things that I'm not comfortable with? And how do I begin to explore the things that I am comfortable with? And it's all self-work. And if you don't know how to do it on your own, you can come to people like myself and other sex educators in the field, whether you're white or Black, whoever you feel you connect with. You know, there's so many of us. You can go on social media and find so many different educators that you can just connect with and see how they can help guide you into that space of connecting with your sexuality. And it's not a situation where they're going to tell you what to do. They'll give you suggestions, and then it's up to you to figure out if you want to do those things or not. But a woman that truly wants to be in touch with her sexuality needs to spend that time with self. That means breaking away from the kids. That means breaking away from your husband. Or if you're single, that means just having that me time, you know, take a bath or go and have a spa day, whatever. Keep a journal. Keep a journal that's specifically just for your sex life, and put all your fantasies in there and your desires. You know, when you're not feeling so sexy, put that in there too. Whatever your thoughts are about your body, about your sexuality, you put it down, because then you want to be able to go back and read that stuff and then question some things like, well, if I don't like the way my breasts sit on my chest, why is that? Is it because I truly feel that they are ugly? Or is it because I've received so many images of what breasts are supposed to look like or are acceptable that I no longer accept myself? And when you start to when you start to hear things like that, then you realize like, oh, wow, this is more than just me learning how to suck a dick, or more than me learning what sex positions I can orgasm in. This is really me learning how to reconnect with myself and throw away all of that messaging that I've received over my entire lifetime. That's the crazy part about it. Every single day we wake up, we are receiving messages from everywhere. Every image that we see, it's like, it's unconsciously having an effect on our subconscious. And that's when we start feeling self-conscious, when we compare ourselves to those images that are being put up as the supreme or the ideal. And so it's just going to take a lot of self-work. And people don't want to do that work because they believe that this is all supposed to be easy.
It's supposed to come
they
naturally.
Believe that, right. Oh, you know, I'm supposed to naturally have a sex drive. I'm supposed to naturally love myself. That don't come naturally. You have to learn. I started having sex at 19. I'm still learning. I'm still learning. And I'm going to be learning for the rest of my life. So I just encourage women, no matter what age you are, start a sex journal, start writing down those sexual thoughts, and start questioning those thoughts to see if those are thoughts that are coming from you or coming from the outside world. And shut those thoughts down from the outside world and start redefining sexuality for yourself. And if you need help, get help from somebody that is a sex coach, sex therapist, a sex educator, whoever you find that you connect with and you feel like they resonate with you. Then I'm not going to say attach yourself to that person, but definitely reach out and get help. We're here to help you. We're not going to judge you. We're not here for that. We're here to help you become liberated. And being liberated does not mean you have to be promiscuous. Being liberated does not mean that you have to dress scantily clad. It doesn't mean you have to wear tight dresses and short skirts and cleavage down the hair. It's not what being sexually liberated means. It just means being free and knowing that you are autonomous over how you express your sexuality. And that's that. You know, we didn't touch on the whole slut shaming thing, but that's kind of been bothering me lately. And just, there is just this big push for ending slut shaming. But I think in a way it's kind of having this reverse effect on certain women where they kind of feel like, wow, so if I'm not in a space where I'm accepting certain expressions, while oh, I can be a slut, I can do whatever I want with whoever I want. I mean, you can, but in the way that it's being put out there, it's just like, oh, it's okay to be with Tyrone and Daniel and then Bobby all on the same day. And it's completely fine. It is. But I just don't want women to feel like, oh, if I'm not fucking the whole world, I'm not liberated. That's not what it is. I don't want women of the world to feel like, you know, they're not liberated or they're not authentic if they're not out here doing whatever with everybody. You can be a woman that's a virgin and be liberated because you're liberated in your mind. And you're liberated because you're still making the choice to say, you know what, I'm a sexual being. I like watching porn. I like playing with toys, whatever, but I just choose to keep that sacred for whomever. That's fine. Right. You can still be liberated. So I just don't want people to get it twisted, because I feel like some people are, and it's starting to make me feel a little uncomfortable.
You feel like they're going so far on the deep end, on the other side, to relate. Well, it's funny because, when I reached out to you on Twitter, I was basically thinking about some of the themes that were coming up, with the Kim Kardashians of the world and the Amber Roses and stuff like that. And so, Amber Rose has attached her name to this movement for the slut walk. And because of her reputation, people don't even understand that it's actually about consent and about confronting rape culture. So that really doesn't have anything to do with what you're wearing, and the fact that it's Amber Rose and it's bringing in. People think that it's really was started from her, but it was actually just she's just a celebrity that's been able to attach her name to what really should be a good cause. And I guess because some women and some men don't agree with her image, they've kind of shunned that whole movement. So and I
think it speaks a lot to who the messenger is, because you could have a messenger that has good intentions, but the average person is not going to take someone serious if, they've seen certain behavior or pattern of how this person is, and they're just kind of like, well, how could this be positive in any kind of way? And I feel like her image does kind of, in a way, make her feel less authentic for a lot of people in what she's doing. A lot of people kind of feel like she's doing it more for self-gratification and promotion, more so than being about the movement. And I do think that she's sincere in what she's doing as far as speaking out against rape culture. But when you say that you're a sex positive feminist for this, when you said that you're a sex positive feminist for this movement, that also means equality for all, not just women, but for all. And so I've had an issue with some of the things that she said in the public, like, for instance, when Kanye came for her son and she came back for Kanye, calling him a fingers in the booty ass bitch, basically shaming him for having a sexual, for supposedly having a sexual preference in, anal play, which is completely fine. What you do behind closed doors doesn't matter. It's nobody's business, and your opinion is just opinion. But it kind of disappointed me, because I'm like, a sex positive person that's a feminist would not do something like that. And for me, it made her look disingenuous. It disappointed me. I'm not even gonna lie. And there's several other things that have been happening that I've just been seeing, and I'm like, look, you're gonna either be for it or against it. Don't choose when to be a part of the movement, because it's kind of insulting people like myself who are extremely passionate about putting people into a place where they feel 100% comfortable with being who they are. So you did that, and now you just shamed a bunch of men who follow you, that probably love you, that probably do like to be anally probed with within their heterosexual relationship, and it's just messed up, because I just feel like some people are not taking her movement serious because of her background and where she came from, which I think is bogus. Because, Corinne Steffens came from a video vixen background, and she did what she did, and she currently speaks in the space of academia at universities and colleges and stuff, and it does not make her any less valid. Amber Rose,
she's definitely intelligent, or she would not have,
Amber Rose is a previous stripper. That doesn't make her movement any less valid, or what she has to say any less valid. But I just feel like you cannot pick and choose which parts you want to support. in the movement. You got to be with it all the way, because the people are going to be like, oh, so what is this about? And I do want to see her do more educating, though.
Mm-hmm.
I would really like to see that, you know, outside of just the slut walk. You know, outside, I think I saw something with her criticizing why Beyonce is not scrutinized as much as herself or Kim Kardashian. And I just felt like, why are you commenting on how another woman decides to express her sexuality if you're sex positive? It shouldn't matter why Beyonce isn't highly scrutinized because of how she chooses to express herself sexually. You should just support it. If you're
it's hard, we're all human. We all have biases.
Yes.
And I struggle with my own, and you always have to call yourself into question when when you hear yourself, just even being bothered. You have to examine why am I bothered,
I want this to be a good thing. I want this to be a good thing. I want her to achieve the goals of ending shaming once and for all. But see, shaming's only going to end with education. And that's why I want her to educate more. Because, first of all, if people just stopped having opinions about the next person's life and then holding them to their personal standards, then we wouldn't have shaming.
That's hard.
That's an uphill battle
to do. That's a whole other show.
Girl,
that's a whole
I've been working on that myself. Just like not having an opinion on anything. It takes a very self-aware person to like be in that place where they're just like, hey, you know what? That's your life. And I don't have any, place to judge that. Everybody's not going to be in that space, and that's fine. But
well, that's all we have. People like you, and the future sexperts of the world, the future counselors of the world, the future just aware and enlightened people, that are more focused on their path, and how they can help others. And that's the only thing that's going to help, change and change the world. But I have enjoyed you, Tayomi, and I just want to remind viewers that they can find you on glamerotica101.com, sexperttayomi.com, and on Twitter at glamazontayomi. Where else can they find you online?
You can find me on YouTube, and that's youtube.com/glamerotica101. Snapchat, Glamazon Tayomi. Instagram, the Glamazon Tayomi. You can just ebony.com. My articles are there.
Very good.
As well as blackdoctor.org. And if you ever get confused about anything, all you have to do is just Google Glamazon Tayomi. And I swear everything will pop up. It's really not hard to find me online. I live my life online pretty much. So just hit me up. I'm always there.
Very good. And you can find me at myloveforwriting.com. I've loved having you. This topic, because it's so important for me to talk about things that, have some substance and things that we don't always get to talk about in mainstream media. So you've been a great guest. Hopefully we'll have you back maybe after you write your book. I know there's some other areas that you want to expand in.
Yes.
So we'll have to have you back hopefully at some point, but I'll certainly be following you and looking for more of the completed interviews online, because I want to finish listening to your shows on Playboy Radio, because those are very entertaining, very informative.
Full shows, like not just clips. There are going to be full-blown shows up on my official Playboy Radio SoundCloud shortly. So I'll be tweeting out the links and everything, so you'll get to listen and putting them on YouTube. So thanks for supporting.
Awesome. Well, I will forward that information to my followers as well. Thank you to everybody that tuned in. She hung out with us for like 2 hours, y'all. So
I sure did.
The replay if you missed anything. Okay. But again, I've enjoyed having you. Thank you so much for being a guest. Thanks to all who tuned in, and everybody have a great night.
Have a good night, guys.